Wow, I can't believe it's Unit 5 already. We are continuing to make our way through the semester, almost a third of the way through the semester by this point. I hope things are starting to make sense for you as we get a better picture of the nonprofit sector and some of the components that go into making it up, and also diving deeper into our readings and understanding not only how the nonprofit sector is organized, but also how money is raised within it, both from individuals, but also from kind of larger social movement building techniques, which we'll dive into some more. We've got a lot of ground still to cover, but we're beginning to kind of get a better sense, hopefully, of the nonprofit sector and what it takes to be successful inside of that sector. Getting close here. I think this might actually be the last week on the Crutchfield and Grant book, if I'm not mistaken. It is. It's the last week on the Crutchfield and Grant book. So, bringing that up to a close, which is bittersweet. It's a great book, but we've got some other things that are exciting ahead of us. Let's talk a little bit about what you have due for this week. So your readings that are due for all students include the Crutchfield and Grant book, those last three chapters, 11, 12, and 13. And then the Bray book, chapters 6, 7, and 11. And then finally, the reading for graduate students only, which is Powell and Bromley, chapters 13 and 29. For your assignments, you have this instructor video lecture, watching the group presentation video, discussion board posts, reading quiz, and group two is doing the presentation this week for unit 6. So that's due at the end of this week. I hope that the presentations are helping you. One, as you're watching them, but also as you're participating in creating them. I find for myself when I'm learning material, it's one thing to hear it and to have someone kind of telling me about something. It's another to engage with it myself and be able to create a PowerPoint or design a lecture. That's how I learn really well, is by embodying the material and having to engage with it. So I hope that's helping you as you're doing that. By this point, everyone has been a part of a group participation, and some of you have done or are doing your second presentation. So please let me know if you have questions, but I've been really enjoying watching those. So thank you for going to the extra work of creating those. All right, without further ado, let's move into our conversation today. So, the topic that we're exploring a little bit is this idea of integrating fundraising efforts into marketing and communications. How do you integrate the two together? And the chapters that we've been reading this week touch on some pieces of that. The Crutchfield and Grant book is really looking at diving deeper into the six practices, leaning into them, the six practices of these highly effective, highly impactful organizations. And it also takes it in an interesting direction by looking at how smaller organizations use these six practices, right? It's not just for these big mega organizations with millions and millions of dollars in their operating budgets. It's also possible to take these six practices and apply them into a local context. In a place where maybe it's a local community theater. That was one of the big examples from the book. Or maybe it's in another smaller organization that helps run after school tutoring programs. In my hometown, there's an organization that runs an after school program that's really impactful in our local community. It's not huge. I'm sure its budget is under $500,000 for sure, but they operate on a shoestring budget, but they make a big difference in kids' lives, right? They provide a consistent, safe space where kids can go after school and they know they're going to receive, I think, some food, they're going to receive some tutoring help, they're going to receive care and kindness and consistency. And so those kinds of things matter. And we see this especially in local communities where some of the most impactful organizations are not the big national or international organizations. Rather, they are local nonprofits that have community-driven support and have a strong sense of purpose tied to the needs of the community. So I really appreciated that chapter, and I think it can be incorporated into our conversation here as we're looking at fundraising efforts to remember that the kind of work you're doing with nonprofits, it doesn't just have to be at a large scale. It can be. These six practices show that operating at a large scale is possible, but also it's possible to make deep impact. And this is what I love most about the Crutchfold and Grant book is that it makes this point that you don't have to be a specific kind of organization or have a specific operating budget to make a deep impact in whatever context your nonprofit organization is operating. That can be done regardless of budget. And I appreciate that so much because it rings true with some of my own experience, and I'm sure some of yours. I mean, think of the most impactful nonprofit organizations in your life. There are some, I'm sure, that are big, large organizations, but also there were some small ones too, right? Like so for me, I'm thinking here locally my wife and my daughter and I, we live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and one of my favorite local nonprofits is a nonprofit that is based in a local park, actually. It's called Heather Farms is the name of the park. And there is a gardening club slash nonprofit that has a bunch of members that come in and tend this big garden and kind of almost a nursery sort of environment where they will sell plants and all kinds of seedlings and things like that. But they also maintain this just gorgeous garden that you can go wander around and it's beautiful. And it's I have a little bit of an obsession with buying plants from there. I have some buttercrunch lettuce that's just fantastic that I got from the Heather Farms nursery, and it's just awesome. And it feels rewarding to support something local, but it's also something that I want to be around in our community for a long time to come. And we can see that kind of line running through these organizations, whether they're small or big, that they make a difference in the people's lives that they impact, right? So I want to talk a little bit more as we're going into this about the Bray book. So the Bray book is very much a hands-on sort of manual and approach for fundraising, for raising money, right? And because of that, it has a very specific tone. It's trying to do something very specific, and it's trying to make these connections and maintain these connections to solicit funds from all kinds of entities or people who might be giving money, right? And I think it's important to remember that as we're looking at some of these practices. I don't know about you, but asking for money makes me uncomfortable. I don't enjoy it naturally. I feel like it's a little mercenary and it's tough to get my brain around. That's a hard thing to do. I've had to do it in multiple roles that I've been in, and I never enjoy it. But what you start to realize as you engage with this is that um, there are ways of asking for money and of um, uh, connecting donors with causes that they believe in that really can make a difference. And there are a couple of things that could help you if you also come from a similar background to me. And maybe you're not going to go out and be a full-time fundraiser, right? If you don't enjoy fundraising, you probably shouldn't go be a full-time fundraiser. But chances are likely if you're in a nonprofit organization, especially a small one that needs funds, and all nonprofits need funds at some point or another, you may find yourself in a position where you might not wear the official fundraiser hat, but you probably will be doing some fundraising. And this is especially true if you're the leader or executive of an organization, or if you're in marketing and communication, which is really relevant for many of you I know who are in majors or in a master's program in the Department of Communication and Rhetorical Studies here at Duquesne. So these things are really relevant. And one of the ways that helps make this possible and doable, as I was reading the book again here, it it reminded me of the fact that that you don't have to be a natural seller. You don't have to be someone who naturally enjoys selling things or convincing people or those kinds of things. What it really highlights and zones in on is the idea that passion, that excitement about a cause can go a really long way in helping donors connect to your vision and your mission and support it and choose to support it. It's not just about being kind of like a used car salesman. It's about genuinely painting a picture of what this organization is doing in the world and then giving an opportunity for the people that you're connecting with to be a part of it. Right. And that's something I can do. And for many of you, that might be the case too. You might feel uncomfortable with this idea of fundraising as selling, but you might be more comfortable with it as sharing the story of the organization and inviting people to be a part of it, right? Because it is awesome and it's something that they would want to be a part of, right? And that's a slightly different frame that I know I find it much easier to work in nonprofit development when I have that frame of mind. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about both books here and what this all looks like. And the Bray book goes on, it moves on from this idea of mid-size and major donors to bequests after someone dies. There's a lot of really important practical information in this chapter that can help you engage with fundraising. And there's some things too that are encouraging about what fundraising does for organizations and how important it is. I think one of the essential items to remember from our readings in the Bray book is that fundraising takes place through relationship. And there's a really decent amount of literature on this in the book itself that's kind of detailing how relationships develop over time and how you should have some things in place before you make these big asks to major givers in your organization, right? It's about building relationship over the long haul. One of the numbers that surprises me every time I hear something like this is that major gift officers are not necessarily jumping into a relationship really quickly with some of these donors and expecting it to pay off immediately, right? It's not something where you knock on the door and ask for $1 million and you just get it, right? It's about cultivating relationship over the long run with this person and helping them feel connected into what the organization is doing and how it's looking in the world. Now, I think this brings us back probably one of the most strong, one of the strongest connections to our theme for this week, which is integrating fundraising efforts into marketing and communication efforts. And this is really important because it's a different kind of perspective when you're looking at marketing and communications materials. So in my role as the director of marketing and communications for the Jesuit School of Theology of Santa Clara University, I often find myself coming to this place where I'm speaking for the institution. I'm telling the story of the school, but I'm also I'm speaking through a particular framing, a particular kind of speaking that I'm doing. And this might be kind of risk or reputational management. There could be something where we're really excited about this particular thing, so I'll have a slightly different tone with that. But and another good example of this is like when I'm creating material for enrollment. It's marketing and communications, but it's kind of pushed through this lens of who is the audience for this. And when you're doing these kinds of development events and things like that, it's an important question to be asking. Who is your audience? And how are you tailoring the narrative of the organization that you're taking care of to that specific person or persons that you're trying to reach? Some things that stood out to me here about the Bray reading that I wanted to talk about here in our conversation include, and I don't know if you saw this or not exactly, but the one of the really interesting things is how hmm, It's how we continue to develop these relationships over time and how to know things like when to ask for money, how much money to ask for. All of these things are about relationship. It's not about just winging it. I think that's actually something really important in development to say is that people who are naturally kind of spontaneous and good at asking for things, they're not always the best fundraisers. In fact, I would want in a fundraiser someone I'm hiring, I'd really want them to be good at research first and foremost. Being a person, like a people person, is great and it takes skill and it's good to connect people with. But more than anything, being able to sift through research, be able to identify the person who needs to hear this specific message and will want to respond in a specific way, that's huge, right? So these chapters are fascinating because they give us this set of coordinates around integrating fundraising efforts into marketing and communication. Right now, my organization doesn't have, or for a while it didn't. It does now, but for a while it didn't have a major or minor gifts officer in those development roles, and that was challenging. It often fell back on the Marcom department to make those things work and to do the heavy lifting, and it was challenging, but it was also rewarding. And I think that's something here to keep in mind is this idea of reintegrating and having a very cohesive direction that you're going with marketing, communication, and fundraising efforts. I think integrating fundraising efforts into marketing and communication takes intentionality. It takes a long haul kind of view of how to bring these things into conversation with one another. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And I enjoy and look forward to our times learning together. Please reach out if you have any questions, and all the best to you.